What we do here is setting the agenda right and redefining patriotism.
In Nigeria, governance is not about servanthood. Governance in Nigeria is about what can I get.
Hello, you're welcome to this week's episode of The Agenda, where we redefine patriotism. We set the agenda right on several matters bordering on security, political issues, and what have you. My name is Philip Haza. I'll not be doing this alone. I have my guest right here in the studio with me, distinguished guest, I must say. You're welcome to the show. I'm going to be speaking with Mr. Dennis Onwegbu. He's a media analyst. You're welcome to the show, sir. He is also the former editor, National Standard Magazine, former manager, editorial services and business development, IT and Telecom Digest magazine. He's also presently the CEO, Dennis Alero Company Limited. And then I'll also be talking to my immediate left, Mr. Bibino Daniel Sule. He is actually a medical practitioner, the MD CEO Pharmaceutical Group, but then he is an independent analyst, and I know he's going to be doing so much justice to the matters we'll be talking about today. You're welcome, Mr. Bibino.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So today we'll be talking about state police through federalism and Nigeria's terrorism challenge. We're going to be looking at the link about the security and how it affects true federalism. Should it be constituted in Nigeria? Federalism is a practice that involves self-governing units, talking about resource control, state laws, state security, revenue generation, and allocation. Currently, I believe the country is running federalization, which is a state of being under federal control. How does this border on our security? That is what we're looking at today, and I'll give a little background of how this whole issue panned out. The chairman, Nigeria's Governors Forum, and Rivers State Governor Chibuike Amechi has joined the clamor for the creation of state police and implementation of true federalism in the country. According to the Governors Forum, only a state police structure can efficiently tackle the surging security challenges facing the country. Now, my first question now is, in line with these agitations, will the creation of state police automatically translate or lead us into true federalism, as the governors are advocating? So who do I pass the baton to first? Okay, I'd like to start with Mr. Dennis.
I don't know. I find it difficult. I quite appreciate the fact that I think the time has come for us to have state police in place. But you cannot isolate it from a true federal structure. Okay. If you take state police, creation of state police out of the essence of having a true federalism, then you're going to have a problem because you're going to keep coming back each time you have crisis. Now, the clamor for state police is quite obvious because now we are facing a difficult time with security situation around the country. And so it becomes inevitable that we have to revisit the structure of our policing to ensure that security is more efficient. But then saying that state police would automatically lead to federalism, it's just state police is just one element of what a true federal structure should look like.
Okay, so it might just be that we're fulfilling a part of a federal structure.
So if we're going to do a federal structure, then we must go into it full-fledged, ensure that the Constitution adequately provides and secures. Because if you take state police, for instance, where you have conflict with the federal police, what do? Okay. The Constitution must appropriately provide for such situations. So it's not just things you do. It has to be a holistic agenda.
Okay, what do you have to say, Mr. Bibino?
Well, the creation of state police, I think the time is right. But I think the major challenge we're having for us to combat crime, I don't think state security is the issue. Okay. I think the issue is our attitude, our perception. Okay. Because the police we are having currently, they are derived from different regions of the country. Okay. Where they are the same people. So what difference will that make? Okay. That's the perspective I'm coming from. What the judge should be looking out for is change of attitude entirely. Because by the time you have state police, believe you me, if the salary package of the state police is higher than that of the federal police, the people in the federal police may resign and join the state police. Okay. And what is same of the same?
We start having a clash of interests.
Okay, if I may come in, if you look at the antecedent for this call for state police, since 1999 to this point. It's of course deriving from this true federalism that we talk about. But you know, when situations arise in particular states, the response capacity for the police is usually in question.
Yes.
Now, you have to get clearance from the federal, and you have to take orders from wherever. That time period is not
like what we're seeing now in the north.
Yes, it's not tolerated in an ideal situation. So this must have prompted the governors and the insistence for state police. But again, like what he has said, if you create state police force, it would automatically mean a further reduction in the capacity or size of the federal police. So these functions must now be properly defined and enshrined in the Constitution such that the two levels would complement each other when the situation arises.
Wow, okay. Now, analysts say if there is a state police, there will be more results in the security sector, unlike the federal police arrangement that is poorly paid, poorly funded, you know, trained and saddled with poor intelligence gathering. Do you agree with this opinion? Just, you know, because we are already entered into that aspect that if there is a state police and then there's going to be a total disintegration of the Nigerian police force. Do you think can they still survive? You know.
No, they should. If you are looking at population, a police population of 12,000, 15,000, which I'm sure is in the range what they have right now. When you have a state police force, it should automatically mean that you don't need as much as maybe 4,000. Who would rather play a much more, you see,
supervisory role.
Yes, because policing has moved away from what we do today.
Yes.
Technology is almost non-existent in our policing system. And we thought this would have been, I mean, 21st century policing has gone beyond having men. And we travel abroad, you see that sometimes you don't even see the men in uniform. But you commit a crime, then you see them emerge. Exactly. How do they do it? They are not magicians. It's technology. Okay. And we are not doing that. We are depending on foot soldiers, and that's why we keep depending on roadblocks or what is it we organize with all the...
Well, thank God that roadblocks has recently been taken off of the... You know, when that roadblock was actually taken off, a lot of people were against it because it was as if, look, you're taking at least a little eye on the streets, on the roads, the federal roads. You know, but I think it has actually helped so far. Policing is not about having your vans parked there. If I am a criminal and I know you park at certain junction, why must I go through that junction? Okay. But if I don't see anyone and I know someone is watching me, then I'll be more conscious in what I do. So it's technology. It's not about having some vehicles and some men on foot. Okay. Mr. Bibino, Governor Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State also says that the challenge of the past 5 decades, close to 50 years now, has been how to sustain the constituent diverse nationalities in the country in equal manner. You know, because Nigeria is a large country with diverse constituency, you know, nationalities rather. How do we, you know, contain that and control it in equal manner? That's where the challenge is.
Though we are not talking about leadership today, but I believe that the major challenge we are having nationally is more or less poor leadership perspective. When one is elected as a leader, you are not elected as a leader of a particular region. Yes. One. Secondly, you are not a leader of a political party. You are not a leader of a particular tribe or religion. You look at yourself as a Nigerian, and each and every aspect of the management must reflect true nationalism. So the challenge we are having is that most of our leaders, they come on board and they bring in sentiment. And I think that's where the problem is coming from. So there must be the orientation of our leadership style.
You think it's contributing to the insecurity?
That's the major challenge we are having. Because some groups felt that they have been unfairly treated, they have been marginalized, and we can see this challenge all over the face of Nigeria or Africa. I'll give you this case scenario in Nigeria. In the Niger Delta region, we have the militants. In those days, we have the Bakassi boys around the eastern part of Nigeria. We have the OPC. Here is Southwest, and we have the Boko Harams now in the north. So the challenge now is how do they operate? I think it's the rate of their mode of their operation that differentiates these organizations. But as far as I'm concerned, they have a particular agenda they are pursuing. Oh, wow. And it comes from poor leadership. Poor leadership.
Poor leadership.
Poor leadership.
I like to hold it there. Poor leadership. Well, that's the perspective from Mr. Bibino. I've been talking to distinguished guests, and you're on the agenda live from Lagos, Nigeria. My name is Philip Ihaza. I would like to take a breather, and when we come back, there is more.
But
You're welcome to the agenda. We've been talking about a lot of issues, especially talking about the state of the nation, security of the nation, talking about state police creation, and as how it links us to true federalism. My name is Philip Ihaza, and well, we left off with Mr. Bibino, where we're talking about leadership, how leadership affects, the insecurity of the nation. Is it the system or the leadership? Do you think we should change it from what it is now, which is federalization, not federalism? Should we change the system or actually change the people that are canvassing the system?
Well, coming from that perspective, I believe that a Nigerian in US, a Nigerian in Africa, and a Nigerian in Europe still remain Nigerian.
Okay. Great.
What we need to do is to change our perspective, change our orientation. There's call for sectional powers by the state to control their resources and all that. To some extent, currently, what we're experiencing is to some extent almost the same thing. They have the resources abundant in their states, and the state governors, most of them are not creative.
Not creative. Okay, talking about that now, Governor Amici of Rivers State, he is a strong advocate of fiscal federalism, and he says he wants the states to be able to be allowed to develop at their own pace. What's your take on that, sir?
Yeah, ideally that should be the standard. Just like he pointed out, what have most of the governors done with the resources they have? How many of them look inward enough to be creative as to generate more revenue internally? Each month, everybody is depending on the federal allocation. Meanwhile, some states are heavily endowed. Very few of them think on how to generate resources. Rather, it's all about what do we get out of the system. Even if we now come back to the situation and say, okay, let's practice true fiscal federalism, we still come back to the same issues. It's the character, just like I said, the men who occupy these offices are a critical factor. Orientation has to change. The most critical office, if you ask me, or ministry that should be, it should be the Ministry of National Orientation. There is a lot that has to be changed about the mentality of the average Nigerian vis-a-vis the way he sees public office and even his own office. So it's a fundamental thing that would have to change for us to begin to arrive at this.
Okay, if you say the states should, be allowed to generate their own resources, and control and also develop at their pace, don't you think there's an imbalance? Because I have a little finding here. The initial division of Nigeria into 3 groups, in which the northern region alone supposedly constituted the size of the western and eastern regions put together. Now, it's set off a train of imbalance that has not changed so much. Now, if the country is made to practice true federalism, how does this imbalance pay off, especially to the ones affected? Talking about income generation, human capital.